Get the unmissable news stories of the day.
This is the Beijing Hour.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
And Shane Bigham with you on this Wednesday, August 5th, 2026. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, coming to you live from the Chinese capital. On today's program, China's objected to a Japanese white paper that labels China as a threat. China's announced countermeasures against U.S. sanctions alleging forced labor. A variety of sources insist that negotiations are underway on a deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. In business, the expansion of China's services sector eased slightly in July. In sports, China's Sheng Juncheng delivers a strong performance at the Montreal Masters. In culture and entertainment, foreigners experiencing China through food. Now the day's top stories. China's expressed firm opposition to Japan's new defense white paper. The Chinese Defense Ministry says the document hypes up the so-called China threat rhetoric and serves as an excuse for Japan to ease restrictions on its own military buildup. Defense Ministry spokesperson Chen Shi dismissed the white paper as filled with false narratives. The current administration, under Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, has released its Defense of Japan 2026 report, which describes China's military activities as Japan's greatest strategic challenge ever. Beijing has reportedly urged Tokyo to reflect on its history of aggression and move away from the wrong path of remilitarization. It also urged Japan to stop interfering in China's internal affairs and misleading the Japanese public and the international community. Just what does Japan's latest defense white paper say about its security strategy and Tokyo's military expansion plans? Chijir takes a closer look.
Defense of Japan 2026 is a roughly 600-page report by the Japanese Defense Ministry. It continues to portray an increasingly severe regional security environment as Japan seeks to revise its three key security documents by the end of this year and accelerate its military buildup. It claims the international community is facing its greatest challenge since World War II and has entered a new era of crisis. The report continues to label China as Japan's greatest strategic challenge ever, making unwarranted criticism and hype over China's routine military activities and legitimate national defense development. It outlines the security policies pursued by the Takaichi government, including Japan's goal of expanding counter-strike capabilities. The document has a section on new forms of warfare, highlighting the growing role of unmanned systems and AI. It also says it will expand missile development. In March, Japan deployed a land-based Type 25 missile with an upgraded 1,000-kilometer range, exceeding territorial defense requirements. For the Beijing Hour, I'm Qi.
South Korea has protested Japan's territorial claims to the Dokdo Islets, which Tokyo restated in its 2026 defense white paper. Seoul has urged Tokyo to withdraw its claims. The South Korean Foreign Ministry summoned the deputy chief of mission from the Japanese embassy in Seoul on Tuesday. It said Dokdo is an integral part of the country's territory historically and under international law, and Seoul says it'll respond to any provocation by Japan over the territory. The Dokdo Islets lie halfway between the two countries. Japan calls them Takeshima. South Korea restored sovereignty over the islets after its liberation from Imperial Japan in 1945. It keeps a small police detachment there. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea has warned of additional military measures in response to Japan's expanding military capabilities. Kim Yo-jong, department head of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, said the country's armed forces would develop new military options based on Japan's recent moves. She pointed to Japan's test of a U.S.-made Tomahawk cruise missile, overseas missile drills in the Philippines, and the deployment of new strike weapons, saying the moves show that Japan is shifting toward a preemptive strike posture. Kim also accused Japan of accelerating its transformation into what she called a war state and urged the international community to remain vigilant. Japan says it's surrounded by threats, stressing the transformation of its combat system and the expansion of its military-industrial sector. In an interview with Hona, Professor Rong Ying at Sichuan University refuted the Japanese claims, warning of severe regional impact if Tokyo continues to push for remilitarization.
I think Japan has always been trying to hype up the regional security situation to look for excuse, look for, I think, pretext to accelerate, to push for its military remilitarization, particularly as we have seen in most recent years when Takaichi administration took office. The white paper of, defense white paper of this year, 2026, was the first by Takaichi's administration. And it just followed, not only followed, but also, I think, the old script, but also, I think, strengthened the rhetoric, the narrative to do that. So this is a very much dangerous move, as far as I can see.
Well, Professor Rong, what regional impact will Japan's military buildup have?
Well, I think the region on the whole has been enjoy peace and stability for the past decades. And thanks to the joint efforts by the regional countries, international community, and one would find that the reasons for that is, first and foremost, I think the priorities of regional countries are very much focused on development, on, I think, peace, diplomacy, and negotiations to address their differences and disputes. And most important, that I think China, as a peace-loving country, has played a very important role in pushing for security dialogue, cooperation, and to ensure that the international system that with UN at the center and international order underpinned by international law has been safeguarded. So I think the initiative and the move, these dangerous moves pushed by Japanese right-wing hardline conservatives represented by Takaichi administration is very much dangerous. It not only, I think, directly challenge the peace, the overall trend of peace and stability in the region, but raise many big questions which are of concern for the region as a whole to the direction of Japan. So developing, establishing kind of war-fighting capabilities or a wartime system in Japan, that is very much dangerous for Japan itself and also for the region as a whole.
That was Professor Rong Ying at Sichuan University. Japanese residents in Kagoshima Prefecture have staged demonstrations over joint military drills with the U.S. In June, the U.S. deployed its Typhoon mid-range missile system at the Maritime Self-Defense Forces Kanoya Air Base for the first time, sparking the protests from local peace groups.
If Kanoya Air Base were attacked, it would not be the base alone that suffers damage. Ordinary residents would be the first to be harmed. That is why we will continue to oppose Japan-U.S. joint military drills. In addition, the Maritime Self-Defense Force plans to permanently deploy several unmanned reconnaissance aircraft at Kanoya Air Base. Such aircraft can provide intelligence support for offensive operations, and we must oppose this kind of deployment.
Japan claims that it will not wage war, while at the same time continuing to conduct joint military drills. Such clear preparations for war are a path Japan should not take. Instead, it should continue to uphold the principle of exclusively defense-oriented policy.
More local assemblies in Japan have called for upholding the country's 3 non-nuclear principles since Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi took office and started pushing for remilitarization. The House of Councillors Secretariat says since October last year, 128 local assemblies in Japan's 36 prefectures have submitted formal opinions to the central government calling for continued adherence to Japan's 3 non-nuclear principles. The figure marks an all-time high since 2000, when the Japanese Diet began accepting local assembly resolutions. The 3 non-nuclear principles refer to the ban on possessing, producing, or permitting the introduction of nuclear weapons on Japanese territory. The country's parliament formally adopted the principles in 1971, and they are the cornerstone of the country's nuclear policy. A recent poll by Kyodo News showed that 76% of 3,000 respondents supported continued adherence to the 3 non-nuclear principles. 77% opposed Japan's participation in the U.S. deployment of nuclear weapons in Japan. Coming up, China's announced countermeasures against U.S. sanctions.
OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic are all cutting prices. Coincidence? Or a sign that Chinese AI is changing the game? As Washington weighs tougher restrictions on Chinese AI models, Silicon Valley is sending a very different message, with NVIDIA, Microsoft, and others embracing open-weight AI. So can the US still contain China's AI rise, or has the race already shifted from stopping China to competing with it? Join us as we unpack the next chapter in the global AI battle on this week's Chat Lounge. Listen wherever you get your podcasts and on CGTN Radio.
At 10 minutes past the hour, China's Commerce Ministry has launched a national security investigation into imported printers and photocopying machines with foreign software. The probe aims to find out the impact of foreign government policies and measures on China's national security interests. The ministry also announced countermeasures against 6 American entities over U.S. sanctions on Chinese companies claiming forced labor. Chinese organizations and individuals are prohibited from trade and cooperation with the U.S. entities, including Applied DNA Sciences. Meanwhile, China's tightened export controls on drones, key parts, and technology to the United States. China has introduced its first mandatory national safety standards for advanced autonomous vehicles, requiring automakers to establish safety systems before deploying Level 3 and Level 4 self-driving technologies on public roads. Level 3 allows vehicles to perform driving tasks under certain conditions, but requires human intervention when needed, while Level 4 enables driverless operation in specific areas. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology says the new standards will take effect on July 1st of next year. Functional Safety Department Director Liu Xingliang at the National Innovation Center of Intelligent Connected Vehicles says the standards mark China's shift from technology development and testing toward commercial deployment, backed by a clear safety framework.
For the
industry, the standard sets a safety baseline for high-level autonomous driving. The focus of research and development is shifting from simply adding more functions and scenarios to strengthening safety management, including closed-loop risk verification and a complete safety assurance system. It will also push companies to further improve capabilities in functional safety, safety of the intended functionality, cybersecurity, data security, and safety management.
Liu says the standards will also help consumers better understand the capabilities and limitations of autonomous driving systems, reducing misuse and improving public trust.
With the introduction of the mandatory standard, one of the key areas covered is Level 3 autonomous driving, where human-machine interaction is critical. Previously, unclear responsibilities between the system and the driver created risks during takeover situations. The standard sets clear and practical requirements for these key areas.
It says challenges remain, especially in dealing with unexpected long-tail scenarios that are difficult to test and quantify.
The question now is how to reduce unknown safety scenarios. How many miles should be tested? How much simulation testing is needed? How should real-world testing be balanced? And how much safer should an autonomous system be compared with an experienced human driver? These are still areas the industry is exploring, with no clear and quantifiable standards yet.
The new rules also require car makers to establish safety management systems throughout the vehicle life cycle, from research and development and manufacturing to software updates, accident response, and supply chain management. Regulators may conduct regular inspections to ensure compliance. Chinese robotics companies are taking their latest AI-powered humanoid robots to Europe, where they hope to expand into workplaces and households. Yet concerns over privacy and data security remain a major hurdle. Michael Marillier has more from London.
Robots know how to party, but pretty soon they'll all have to get a job. Chinese firm Agibot builds these machines, which are driven by artificial intelligence. The company held a conference in London, announcing that its robots could soon work in European shops and factories.
It's like a person, when he grows in this country, when he grows in this factory, and he will be very familiar and adapted in this localized environment.
If European governments give the go-ahead, humanoid robots could eventually work in the home, helping with household tasks and even looking after children. But most robots are made in China or the United States. And the fact is, many consumers are nervous about foreign tech firms. Just this year, Politico Europe conducted a poll across 6 countries in Western and Central Europe. It asked how people felt about tech companies from the US and China. 80% said they worry about privacy and the way companies handle their personal data.
People love public spaces because they want to form connections. And trust is the basis of any connection. So the challenge for robotics firms is simple, but also complicated. They have to get people to trust them.
Robot makers could highlight the data privacy laws in the European Union. They apply to all companies that handle Europeans' data, even if those companies are based outside Europe. But tech analyst Arthur Goldstuck says foreign firms don't need a massive public relations campaign. He thinks people will learn to trust robots as they use them more and more. It's a trend we've already seen with mobile phone brands, which build millions of handsets outside their own countries.
Most of those devices are actually manufactured in China, and people accept that a Chinese factory is producing a Samsung or an Apple phone, so already they are being almost required to trust the technology that's coming from the East. And a similar situation will emerge with regard to robots.
Back at the Agibot conference, the dancing continues. The relationship between humans and robots is a bit like a dance. It only really works if we're moving to the same beat.
That was Michael Marillier reporting. A new buzzword among travelers is going viral globally. China maxing. It means maximizing your immersion in the Chinese lifestyle, like drinking hot water, practicing Tai Chi, wearing custom-tailored suits, and traveling deep into the country. This summer, China Cool and China Maxing are dominating social media as record heat waves in Europe drive tourists to China's natural air-conditioned spaces. Their itineraries now span nearly 500 cities, far beyond the usual hotspots. Tech tourism is booming as factories, robot shows, and even rocket launches in Hainan are drawing crowds. Spending by inbound visitors is up nearly 73% since June. On-screen stories and unique neighborhoods are also drawing international tourists deep into China's local history and design. Films and other creative works are turning historic streets across the country into travel destinations. In Shanghai, that pull's especially strong. In the first half of the year, the city recorded more than 4 million foreign visitor arrivals, and that was up nearly 30% from a year earlier. For many, the city's blend of local fashion and Chinese design is a major part of the draw.
It's a beautiful day, so it's just a really nice spot to come sit and have a drink and relax. So it's quite busy and quite touristy, but sat in a coffee shop like this to just chill out. We've got a game and we're going to just have a drink.
And also I think this is, from like the research that we did, this has like the most kind of shops along kind of one area that appealed the most, so that's why we came over here, yeah. I've seen a few, I don't remember their names, but I liked kind of like the silks. Those are really pretty.
You can find something new and fresh in Shanghai as well, and the museum here is very well organized.
Chen Tong explains what makes Shanghai such an attractive place for international tourists.
Citywide, Shanghai has welcomed 465,000 international travelers in July alone, and this is a year-on-year increase of over 20%, and 60% of these international travelers enter Shanghai via the visa-free policy and also 240-hour transit visa-free scheme, and also inbound travel bookings here in Shanghai surged by 275% during the summer holiday, and the tourists from Europe, showing their enthusiasm with some flight routes seeing surge of over 80%. Republic of Korea and Russia, United States, Thailand, and Malaysia have become the 5 largest tourist origin countries, while Shanghai ranks first among all Chinese cities in terms of popularity to foreign tourists. And I think the reason is obvious. Well, first, because of Shanghai's international reputation, but second, I think it's also Shanghai's flexibility flexibility and a quick reaction to the large visitor inflow. Well, for example, here at Shanghai Hongqiang International Airport, they have deployed more staff and volunteers who can speak multiple languages to help foreign tourists if they need any assistance. And also some scenic spots like Yuyuan Garden, the Bound, and Disneyland have also deployed more staff and volunteers to help these foreigners. But there's one interesting phenomenon during this summer holiday. Well, I think more foreign tourists, they come to Shanghai not only to see the traditional scenic spots, but also they want to have some unique Shanghai experiences. For example, there's one suit market which gone viral during the summer holiday. Well, the soft spinning fabric market has seen a lot of foreign tourists come to the market to make some suits and shirts. Well, earlier in February, actually, I visited that suit market. Almost all the tailors there, they speak English. And also the prices are not expensive. So there are a lot of foreign tourists who come to, for example, measure their size at day one and pick their suits or shirts the day they leave the city. And the suit market, I think, is just one example. There's a similar optical market in Shanghai also offering similar services. So you can tell Shanghai businessmen, Shanghai tailors, and the Shanghai local government, they are quite flexible. You know, once this place gone viral, they will deploy more staff, volunteers to help these foreign tourists.
That was Chen Tong in Shanghai. Coming up, various officials say talks are underway for reopening the Strait of Hormuz.
You've been listening to programs from CGTN Radio.
CGTN Radio.
We invite you to visit us online for more audio, pictures, and in-depth reports. At radio.cgtn.com, you can access a wide range of programs and find your favorite news, talk, features, entertainment shows, and podcasts. Hear the difference with CGTN Radio.
At 22 past the hour, a deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz is under negotiation. The Iranian Foreign Ministry says talks with Oman have been positive, with the two sides discussing safe passage for ships through the strategic waterway and arrangements for future maritime operations. U.S. President Donald Trump says the administration's held very good talks with Iran and expects the key shipping route to reopen soon. Trump has again warned Iran that it would face severe consequences if it backs out of the agreement. James Gooderson reports.
There is a bit of wartime whiplash when it comes to the past week or so. We've seen President Trump initially at the start of last week talk about diplomacy. Then over the weekend, there were talks of a massive strike on Iran's energy infrastructure. And now here we are into Tuesday, and again, more talks of diplomacy. However, it does feel like there is a sense of momentum towards some form of deal. President Trump, from his point of view yesterday in the White House, said that Iran would have every last chance before decapitation, which perhaps shows you his mindset on things, pushing the idea that military action will happen unless a deal is agreed. But Iran remain defiant in those negotiations, and the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying there could be something within 24 hours. But what could that something be? Because it doesn't feel like we are anywhere near resolving some of the key issues around this conflict. Things like Iran's nuclear program, what to do with their uranium, their ballistic missiles, etc. What it does look like could happen in the next 24 hours is a preliminary short-term agreement which will see traffic begin to go through the Strait of Hormuz again, and perhaps the US blockade being lifted.
The strait's going to be open very soon, or they're going to get hit very hard, and then the strait's going to be open. And we were going to a tremendous attack, the biggest since World War II. And they called me and said, very politely, please, can we talk? Can we talk? They didn't want. And I said, yes, we can talk. Let's get it done. Finally, let's get it done.
We are in talks with the Iranians, and I think there is a chance we may have a deal today or tomorrow to open the strait and move towards a more normalized position in this conflict.
Mr. Secretary, the idea of having a deal today or tomorrow to reopen the strait, would that be reopening the strait, but the Iranians somehow having the ability to charge a toll on that? Or would that be reopening the strait and it's free and clear and anybody can move through?
I think it would be freedom of movement.
All of that is up in the air, but it does feel like now there's a perceived push by Gulf countries, Oman specifically negotiating with Iran, but other Gulf countries to try and get that strait open. We know for a fact President Trump said yesterday that Saudi Arabia, UAE and Qatar all called and spoke to him over the weekend. So perhaps that's what's driving this.
That was James Gooderson reporting. The Iranian Foreign Ministry says any new routes through the Strait of Hormuz must protect the sovereign rights and security of Iran and Oman. A senior Iranian official told state media that a new corridor will replace the existing northern and southern routes. Ehsan Kevani has more from Tehran.
Despite President Trump's claims that negotiations were happening between Tehran and Washington, Iranian officials have flatly denied that, insisting that the only talks underway are between Iran and Oman exclusively. A media advisor to Iran's nuclear negotiating team even went as far as calling Trump a liar, saying he has no credibility in Tehran. Other countries like Pakistan and Qatar have been trying to mediate, and messages are indeed being exchanged between Iran and the U.S., but so far Tehran doesn't seem to be budging. Deputy Foreign Minister of Iran, Kazem Gharimabadi, has made it clear that the 60-year-old passage through the Persian Gulf no longer works for Iran, mainly because both the entry and exit points are inside Omani territorial waters. Tehran says the region has changed and it needs more control over ship movements in and out of the Persian Gulf. The situation in the strait is far from settled. There's almost daily drama. Sometimes Iran owns up to attacks on ships, sometimes it doesn't. Still listening to officials and IRGC statements, the message is pretty clear. As long as Tehran isn't happy with any deal, it's going to keep the Strait of Hormuz either closed or at least unsafe.
That was Ehsan Kevani in Iran. A record-breaking heat wave continues to sweep across Europe. The Italian Health Ministry has placed all 27 major cities under the highest heat alert for the first time ever, as temperatures climbed to 40 degrees Celsius in some areas. In Hungary, the top-level heat alert was extended until midnight on Friday. A drought has lowered water levels in Hungary's rivers, bringing its only nuclear plant to the brink of shutdown. In Switzerland, meteorologists expect this year to rank among the hottest on record. Scientists have warned that Austria's largest glacier, one of the most iconic natural landmarks in the country, is disappearing at an alarming pace. Johannes Pleshberger reports.
Tourists are flocking to the Pasterze Glacier, hoping to catch one last glimpse before Austria's largest ice giant splits apart. Extreme heat has turned what was once eternal ice into cascading waterfalls.
Of course, it's always sad when a national thing is destroyed.
Over the past 30 years, scientists have watched the ice connecting the glacier's upper and lower sections melt away. In the 1990s, it was almost 300 meters thick. Today, it's barely visible beneath the gravel and sediment. Now, extreme heat is accelerating that process, splitting the Pasterze in two and ending its reign as Austria's largest glacier.
There have always been glacial advances and glacial retreats, but human activity is definitely accelerating the process. We are now seeing temperatures of 30 degrees Celsius up here, and that's not the norm. As a result, the glaciers will retreat a little faster.
Summer up here now is not only hotter but longer. 20 years ago, glacial melt was largely confined to July and August. Today, it can last from May through November, accelerating the glacier's dramatic retreat. The heat is also affecting local wildlife. Marmots are forced to seek shelter because they cannot sweat or regulate their body temperature effectively. That leaves them with less time to forage for food, while their habitat continues to shrink as the tree line climbs higher. As the glacier gets closer to breaking in two, large meltwater lakes are forming next to the ice. Scientists warn that Austria could become largely ice-free within the next 40 years, changing forever how this country looks.
That was Johannes Pleshberger reporting from Austria. We're at 29 past the hour. Beijing getting cloudy conditions through tomorrow with a low of 25 and it's up to 36 on Thursday. Shanghai will see a light rainfall tonight and tomorrow, a low of 27 and a high of 34. Chongqing is getting cloudy conditions, a light rain tomorrow, a low of 26, the high is 34 degrees. It's time for a short break. So far this hour, China's objected to a Japanese white paper that labels China as a threat. China's announced countermeasures against U.S. sanctions alleging forced labor. And a variety of sources insist that negotiations are underway on a deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Shane Begum with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
The transition to a greener future is no longer a distant goal. It's happening now. In power plants, factories, farms, and cities across China. As the world grapples with climate change, energy security, and the growing demand for electricity, China is searching for new ways to cut emissions while keeping its economy moving. Across the country, our reporters visit renewable energy hubs, industrial centers, and agricultural communities to see what that transformation looks like in practice. Through first-hand stories and on-the-ground reporting, we explore the opportunities, the challenges, and the ideas shaping China's green transition. Listen to China's Green Code, Rewriting the Rules of Growth, a special series from Climate Watch, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Shane Bigham with you on this Wednesday. Still to come. In business, the expansion of China's services sector eased slightly in July. In sports, China's Sheng Juncheng delivers a strong performance at the Montreal Masters. In culture and entertainment, foreigners experiencing China through food. To contact us, you can email radio@cgtn.com or follow our X account @CGTN Radio. You're also welcome to subscribe to our Substack newsletter Beyond Beijing for the world's biggest stories, along with sharp insights and exclusive analysis. First of all, a check of the day's headlines. China's Shenzhou 21 astronauts have completed their rehabilitation and made their first public appearance after returning from the Tiangong space station in May. Crew members Zheng Lu, Wu Fei, and Zheng Hongzheng are resuming work and training. They stayed in orbit for a record 210 days in China's longest single crew mission. Brazil's condemned the United States for revoking the visa of its ambassador to Washington, calling the move unjustified and based on false claims. The U.S. says the decision was in retaliation for Brazil denying visas to two American officials and delaying approval of President Donald Trump's nominee for ambassador to Brazil. Brazil says the U.S. officials plan to challenge Brazil's electoral system, calling it interference in its domestic affairs. Meantime, Brazil's downgraded diplomatic relations with Argentina after Argentine President Javier Milei criticized Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and other officials. Brazil recalled its ambassador last month in protest and has now reduced ties to the charge d'affaires level. Argentina said it regrets Brazil's decision. A deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz appears increasingly within sight, with officials from Washington and Tehran and regional mediators signaling progress in ongoing diplomatic efforts. U.S. President Donald Trump said Washington's having very good discussions with Iran, while also warning that Tehran will be hit very hard if it doesn't open the strait very soon. But Iran's also rejected U.S. claims that negotiations are ongoing, insisting the only talks taking place are with Oman. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the United States was also involved. Qatar confirmed that mediation efforts continue. Israel and Lebanon have resumed talks in Rome on the implementation of a framework peace agreement reached in Washington in June. The U.S.-mediated talks, the seventh round to date, began on Tuesday and will continue through Thursday. The discussions are focused on security arrangements in southern Lebanon and the disarmament of the Iran-aligned Hezbollah group. Washington hopes the negotiations will eliminate security threats to Israel and restore Lebanese state authority throughout the south. However, Hezbollah has repeated its opposition to the talks and the framework deal. The Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is taking a worrying turn, with more than 1,700 deaths recorded in what's now the fastest-growing Ebola outbreak on record. Africa's CDC Director General Jean Kaseya warns that the outbreak has not yet reached its peak.
We don't like the trajectory of this outbreak, and it's already the second largest outbreak in the world. But if we take a photo after 14 weeks of declaration, it's the biggest outbreak, 7 times more than the West African outbreak. We cannot continue like that.
According to the latest government data, more than 3,800 cases have been reported with over 1,700 deaths. Kaseya said contact tracing efforts are failing to contain the spread, with nearly 70% of new cases linked to community transmission rather than known contacts. The outbreak, declared on May 15th, is driven by the Bundibugyo virus, for which no approved vaccines or treatments are currently available. NASA says part of a used SpaceX rocket is set to crash into the moon on Wednesday. It is tracking the Falcon 9 upper stage used during a commercial mission. Scientists are planning to collect lunar data from the event and refine techniques for tracking objects in space. SpaceX launched the Falcon 9 rocket and deployed Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost 1 lunar lander to the moon in January of last year. The city in East China has launched the country's first residential centralized cooling project that uses water from abandoned coal mines, offering a cost-effective and eco-friendly cooling solution. Underground water, which maintains a year-round temperature in the low teens Celsius, circulates through a heating network and underfloor pipes at a residential compound in Suzhou. For an apartment of around 100 square meters, the project, running through the summer, costs residents roughly the same amount as they'd spend on air conditioning for 1 month. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in business, the expansion of China's services sector eased slightly in July.
The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
36 past the hour. And with business now, here's Wang Ziheng.
Thank you, Shane. Chinese mainland stocks closed higher on Wednesday. The Shanghai Composite Index rose nearly 1.5%, while the Shenzhen Component Index gained almost 1.9%. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index edged up more than 0.2%. Japan's Nikkei climbed about 3.7%. China's services sector continued to expand in July, although growth slowed from June. The latest PMI survey by Rating Dog shows the services PMI stood at 50.4 in July, marking the 43rd month of expansion in services output. The sector gained support from steady employment growth, resilient export demand, and easing cost pressures. New business also continued to grow, extending a streak of expansion lasting more than 3.5 years. Services companies maintained strong export momentum, with new export orders expanding for a third month. The survey found overseas demand improved, driven by more exhibitions, study visits, settlement services, and better customer management. Now, for more on China's services sector, Lili Lu spoke with Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novem Arcade Technologies.
What marginal improvements have emerged regarding new orders, exports, employment in July's figures?
Basically speaking, the marginal improvements that we have seen in recent economic data, especially the PMI data, has been that China has achieved significant growth with various high-tech industries. We can see the high technologies is now leading the growth of China's economy. It brings more orders and increases the global trade, including both the export and import, and also it improves the employment, especially the employment in the jobs that pay much more than traditional positions. So overall speaking, this rising with high technologies has brought China's economy forward with a very rapid pace. This has offset the negative influence of the economic sectors such as construction, which has recorded a slower growth in the past months, basically because there have been too many rains, which stopped the process of many construction work.
Actually, what contributed to July's services figure are very much seasonal factors with summer consumption. What does it tell us about recovery of domestic demand?
Well, for the domestic demand, we can see there are drivers of growth in many different sectors. First of all, driven by better high technologies, high-tech related domestic demand has been growing at a very good pace. This includes many parts. For example, the consumption of high technologies, also the online shopping has been increased at a good speed. Meanwhile, we can also see that in last months, because the summer holiday has come, therefore the tourism industry has been increasing compared with the months before. Furthermore, when China is opening its gates wider and wider to the global market, we can also see there are much more foreigners coming to consume in China compared with last year. The number of foreigners who came to visit China has increased by over 20% compared with the year of 2025. According to the trend of the first 6 months, the growth rate shall also be very high. This has strongly increased the domestic market of China as well as China's connection with the global economy.
Like catering, accommodation, cultural entertainment, they have been strong drivers of the services industry. How effective is this transmitting into corporate revenue, employment, spending confidence, and more importantly, sustained spending confidence?
All these sorts of things have been a very strong driver for the growth of employment as well as the consumption confidence. We can see that tourism-related consumption sector is the one that employs a huge amount of people compared with many other industries. So these industries are really important for the development of employment. And it also brings a lot of revenue for the local businesses, especially the local small businesses.
That was Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novem Arcade Technologies. China and Indonesia have launched a new cross-border payment system, allowing travelers to pay with their home mobile apps without exchanging cash or currency. The latest initiative is expected to make travel and shopping easier while boosting trade and tourism between the two countries. Sukiya Aluwalia reports from Jakarta.
Paying for daily expenses in Jakarta used to be a challenge for Wang Minjun. As a Chinese national living in Jakarta, her payment apps did not work here, and she relied entirely on cash. But recently, all of that have changed.
Now there's Alipay. Before, Chinese visitors who might have just arrived, say, 3 days ago, and were staying in hotels would come in to buy food, drinks, or a meal but didn't have cash on them. Now, they don't need cash. They just use their phones to scan. It works perfectly. We accept QRS and Alipay. They can just scan via WeChat, and the payment goes through instantly. Many people don't carry cash or cards anymore.
Indonesia and China officially launched their cross-border payment this year. This is a government initiative backed by Bank Indonesia and the People's Bank of China. The system connects Indonesia's QR payment standard known as QRIS with China's two biggest payment platforms, Alipay and UnionPay. For Indonesians traveling to China or for those living there, this initiative is making their daily lives so much easier. Across Southeast Asia, countries have been building payment networks that connect their national systems to each other and increasingly to China. In Indonesia, this means transactions between the two countries can be settled in rupiah and yuan, bypassing the US dollar entirely. That lowers transaction costs and is part of a push by both governments to reduce reliance on the dollar in regional trade.
This makes things easier for Chinese consumers here. They no longer need to exchange currency or use internationally recognized credit cards. This offers greater convenience, particularly for smaller transactions, so it ends up supporting local MSMEs. When using cash, spending tends to be more mindful. We are acutely aware of the amount leaving our pockets, whereas digital payments often feel less painful, leading to higher transaction volumes.
Indonesia's digital payment sector is growing fast. Bank Indonesia reported nearly $14.4 billion in digital transactions in just the first 3 months of this year, up almost 34% compared to the same period last year. The real-world impact is already visible. Chinese tourist arrivals to Indonesia hit a 6-year high of more than 1.3 million in 2025. With payments now becoming easier, spending is expected to increase.
That was Sukina Aluwalia reporting. China's exoskeleton robot market exceeded 1.6 billion yuan last year. That's around $230 million. A report from the International Data Corporation shows shipments reached about 26,000 units during the year. An exoskeleton robot is a wearable machine that gives the user extra strength, endurance, or mobility. Medical rehabilitation remained the sector's largest source of revenue, while consumer mobility devices accounted for more than 70% of total shipments. The report says growing adoption across industries is creating new opportunities for market expansion. SpaceX has reported stronger than expected results in its first earnings report since going public in June. The company founded by Elon Musk posted $7.8 billion in second quarter revenue, beating market expectations, while its net loss narrowed from a year earlier. Revenue nearly doubled, driven by growth in its satellite internet service Starlink. However, SpaceX shares fell in after-hours trading as investors remain concerned about rising spending, including major investments in artificial intelligence infrastructure. Toyota has raised its profit forecast for the current fiscal year, but still expects earnings to decline for a third year. The Japanese automaker projects net profit to fall over 15% from the previous year and operating profits to drop by nearly 10%. Toyota said currency exchanges have improved its outlook, but rising new materials costs and production cuts linked to geopolitical tensions continue to put pressure on earnings. The Japanese company is also facing growing challenges in China, where sales fell 17% in the first half of the year. Analysts say intensifying competition from Chinese electric vehicle makers is challenging Toyota's strategy of prioritizing hybrid vehicles over fully electric models. South Korea's consumer prices rose at a slower pace in July as higher energy costs linked to Middle East tensions continue to put pressure on inflation. The consumer price index increased less than 3%, marking the first slowdown in 3 months. Oil products were the main driver of the increase, with fuel prices climbing significantly. South Korea's heavy reliance on imported energy has left it exposed to swings in global oil markets.
Thank you very much. That's Wang Ziheng with Business. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, China's Sheng Juncheng delivers a strong performance at the Montreal Masters.
Sideline Story brings you all things sports related. The hottest topics, latest events, juiciest stories, all with a very personal take. Subscribe to Sideline Story Podcast for heated sports discussions covering events that are happening in China and around the world.
Now 47 past the hour. Turning to sports and starting with tennis. China's Sheng Juncheng has saved 5 match points to stun 10th-seeded Andrei Rublev 7-5, 4-6, 7-6 in Montreal, reaching the third round of the ATP Masters 1000 event there. The 21-year-old was sidelined for nearly 5 months after losing in the second round of the Dubai Championships in February and returned to competition only last week in Washington. He rallied from 5-2 down in the decider to become the first Chinese man in the Open era to reach round 3 in Montreal.
First of all, I want to thank all the fans for the support. I'm very happy that I was able to bring 100% competitiveness on the court and show my tennis. I'm really pleased to get 2 straight wins here. Thank you to everyone, and thank you to my team for all the hard work. I hope I keep going the next round.
Well, he next faces Luciano Darderi. And meantime, in Toronto, China's Zhang Shuai continued her impressive run at the WTA National Bank Open, winning in 10 straight games before Yelena Ostapenko retired. Zhang won the Australian Open women's doubles title this year and snapped a 7-match losing streak in the first round of this tournament. She'll now face world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka in the round of 32. Aston Villa beat BG Pathum United 3-1 in Thailand, making it 2 wins on their Asia tour. But the victory came at a cost as John McGinn injured his left knee and Alejandro Garnacho left with a bloody mouth. Coach Unai Emery now faces injury concerns.
We are a little worried about 2 injured players, but hopefully it's not going to be so much, Garnacho and John McGinn. But everything after it was happened like we planned, and of course we are happy to be here to compete in this stadium. The pitch was very good and the atmosphere was very good, the opponent as well.
Villa heads to Hong Kong now to face Bayern Munich on Friday. They'll meet PSG in the UEFA Super Cup 5 days later. World Cup breakout star Vizinha has been officially unveiled by Chile's Colo-Colo after joining from Portuguese side Chaves. The 40-year-old goalkeeper said the move is the best moment of his club career and that Colo-Colo was always his top priority. He thanked Chilean authorities for allowing him to use his nickname Vizinha, which honors his grandparents.
The World Cup was the greatest thing that happened to me in football, but that is not in the past. Today, being here representing Colo-Colo, a great club with a great history, is for me the best moment of my club career. I received offers from many places, but as said before, I always dreamed of playing for a big club.
The veteran trained with his new teammates on Tuesday and could debut as early as Sunday's league match against Union La Calera. Phil Foden says he's ready to take on a leadership role at Manchester City following the departure of several veterans. Speaking after arriving in South Korea for the team's Asia tour, the midfielder said he wants to be among the captains this season. Foden also said he's enjoying life under new manager Enzo Maresca after spending his entire City career with Pep Guardiola. He calls it now a fresh start.
I found it good, to be honest. Obviously, all I've known is Pep Guardiola, so to go to a new manager, it's just a fresh start, you know. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the new coaching staff and the way we're playing and the things we're doing in training. So, I'm just really excited for the season and hopefully we can have a really good year.
Maresca says the club could still make more signings before the transfer window closes. Maresca said the squad has a few gaps to fill but remains open to reinforcements after losing key players at the end of last season. The new City boss is preparing his team for preseason friendlies in Seoul against the K-League All-Stars and Atletico Madrid, with the Premier League campaign fast approaching. China's under-17 team has made it 2 wins out of 2 at the Shanghai Future Star Cup, beating Athletic Bilbao 1-0. Defender Chung Sheng-han, who also scored the winner against Arsenal on Monday, headed home from Xu Zhengpeng's corner in the 14th minute. China nearly doubled their lead when substitute Zhao Songyuan hit the crossbar. Player Chen Junbo says they're full of confidence.
Facing teams from football powerhouses, our priority is to focus on ourselves. We believe in our own abilities and have the confidence to compete against and beat any opponent. We believe we can make it happen.
China will face Bayer Leverkusen on Thursday. In gymnastics, China's men's and women's national teams completed selection trials in Jining, Shandong Province, for the 2026 Asian Games and the Rotterdam World Championships. Following the Asian Championships in Zuni in June, the team has yet to return to its best form. 13 male gymnasts took part in the trials, divided into 2 groups, including all-round star Zheng Boheng, who continued to improve his performance, competing in 5 events, but not the rings. A 2-time Olympic champion Zhou Jingyuan also participated in the trials, competing in the parallel bars and the pommel horse.
The injury has improved after a period of rest. The next step is to gradually raise my competitive level and complete this year's and next year's goals. For athletes, competition is an important way to adjust and improve their form.
For the women's team trials, 9 gymnasts were divided into 2 groups, while Ko Chin-chin, the all-round champion at the Asian Championships and National Games, missed the trials because of physical discomfort. The squad list for the Asian Games and World Championships will be released after Friday. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in culture and entertainment, a foreigner is experiencing China through food.
Pod Plus, a selection of the best podcasts in China, covering history, customs, music, literature, and in-depth dialogues. Find your way to a wealth of Chinese culture and thinking, all on Pod Plus.
53 past now, turning to culture and entertainment. A former tour guide in the southwestern Chinese province of Yunnan now hosts foreign visitors in local kitchens, using food as a gateway to cultural understanding. Yang Jinghao reports.
Around 9 a.m. every morning, Wu Fanzi begins her day at a local farmer's market in Lijiang, southwest China's Yunnan province. Guiding foreign visitors through colorful stalls, she introduces them to local ingredients, traditional flavors, and the stories behind Yunnan's diverse cuisine.
it was great because we discovered some fruits we don't know in France, for example, and we discovered a lot of flavors. It was beautiful.
It's a very good environment. People are very, very nice, and it's like nice mess everywhere. It's super clean, but it's very typical local. I liked it very much, very, very much.
Wu once worked as a tour guide. In 2020, she decided to start a cooking class.
I've always loved food. That was where the idea started. And since I can speak foreign languages, I thought, why not share the best part of my hometown's culture with people from all around the world?
A trip to the local market is just the beginning. After discovering Yunnan's unique ingredients and flavors, these visitors would take the experience one step further, stepping into the kitchen to cook authentic local dishes themselves. In the kitchen, visitors learn how to prepare typical Yunnan dishes, such as a chicken salad known locally as ghost chicken, a specialty of the Jingpo ethnic group. They also get to make rice noodles, a beloved staple food in the region. For them, this is more than cooking a meal. It's a chance to build connections across cultures.
It was amazing. We did by ourselves with the kids. We did a chicken salad and noodle soups and a really beautiful dishes.
It's very good to see, like to enter a bit the local area, the local life, what people are doing here, instead of just like passing by, visiting. It was the most important things for us to show the life of Chinese people for our kids.
Over the years, Wu's cooking class has continued to grow in popularity. So far, she has welcomed around 2,000 guests from nearly 30 countries. This summer, as more travelers seek cooler destinations away from extreme heat, Yunnan's pleasant climate and unique culture are attracting increasing attention, and Wu's kitchen has also got much busier.
That was Yang Jinghao reporting. American college soccer players are trading the pitch for culture in southern China. 20 students and teachers from the University of Pennsylvania have kicked off their Hainan exchange with Chung opera face painting, Chinese knot weaving, and friendly matches against a local team. Over the coming days, a team will visit Haikou, Chongzhong, and Wuzhishan, playing more matches while exploring ethnic traditions and tropical scenery. Artists from the Chinese mainland have brought traditional performing arts to audiences in Taiwan, staging 3 shows aimed at promoting cross-strait cultural exchanges. The China Coal Mine Art Troupe performed crosstalk, clapper talk, and Peking opera in Taipei and Kaohsiung. Organizers said the tour was designed to strengthen cultural ties, with performances adapting some routines to better connect with local audiences. The posthumous work of Japanese mystery novelist Keigo Higashino has gone on sale in Japan. Eternal Memory is the 11th installment of the Detective Galileo series, featuring physicist Manabu Yukawa, and marks Higashino's 106th published work. The writer died of cancer just last month at the age of 68, and he's known for numerous mystery novels, including The Devotion of Suspect X. We're at 57 past the hour. Beijing, cloudy overnight and through tomorrow. It's down to 25 degrees this evening and 36 for a high on Thursday. Shanghai will see a light rainfall through tomorrow with a low of 27, the high is 34. Chongqing will be cloudy tonight, a light rain developing tomorrow, a low of 26 and a high of 34. Nanchang's getting clouds through tomorrow with a low of 28 and a high of 35. Lhasa has cloudy conditions tonight and tomorrow, a low of 13, the high is 24. Elsewhere in Asia, Islamabad will see a light rainfall tonight and tomorrow. It's down to 25 this evening, up to 34 on Thursday. And that's it for this edition of the Beijing Hour. Making news today, China's objected to a Japanese white paper that labels China as a threat. And China's announced countermeasures against U.S. sanctions alleging forced labor. On behalf of the staff, this is Shane Bigham in the Chinese capital, hoping you'll join us for the next edition of the Beijing Hour and open a window to the world together.
The best military commander is not he who fights 100 battles and wins every one of them. The best military strategy does not lead to the desiccation of the enemy's capital city. Decoding the Art of War will help you understand why there's no art in war and how Sun Tzu stayed undefeatable using the science of war, with fun stories and insightful breakdown of famous battles. Find Decoding the Art of War wherever you listen.
A poem for the Tibetan antelope.
the gentle spirit of the Qinghai Seazon Plateau, spoken by voices from across the world. Every spring, female antelopes migrate hundreds of miles to Zhuonai Lake to give birth, as we build gentle passages for their journey.
Hello, little Tibetan antelope. Eyes opening to the light for the very first time.
To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower.
So much wonder calls for so much courage. But have no fear. The way home is right there, waiting for you.
From the snows of Kunlun to the winds of Tangula, the wilderness will teach me to be strong.
But the call of life itself never ceases.
A train runs toward the horizon. A road stretches through the wilderness.
The bridge that soars through the clouds is no barrier across the land, but a gateway to where I truly belong.
Tibetan antelope's hoofprints loosen the soil, letting snow melt sink into the earth.
Human presence passes through,
but we've never walked this land alone.